to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome, everybody, to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR is my Twitter handle. Don't forget to hit that text line and the little animation below. Don't forget to hit that bell. Do all those things so you know when we are having a show and we uploaded a show. You can go ahead and watch that show. Don't watch it while you're driving. That's what the audio version is for. Be safe out there, Raider Nation. So the Raiders have a head coach, right? So the worst kept secret in football was Antonio Pierce being the new head coach of the Raiders. We'll talk about our feelings about that. Ryan, how you doing today? And what are your feelings about Antonio Pierce becoming the next head coach of the Raiders?
First of all, it's the wet shores of the Pacific Ocean today. I got rain up here.
Yeah, rain there. It's supposed to be coming down here. A lot of stuff got canceled. We had like a little beach thing today, and that got canceled. So yeah.
No, I think, going back to Antonio Pierce, the way the Raiders were able to finish the season down the stretch in December, beating the three division rivals, beating the Chiefs on the road. We all knew that Antonio Pierce had a leg up on the coaching search. Now, was it an actual coaching search? I'm sure we'll talk about that later. I don't know if it was. But the only real challenger in this to AP from a Raiders fan perspective, and then nationally, you heard, was Jim Harbaugh. And by all accounts, the Raiders reached out to his agent very early in the process, and it kind of died right there. So I don't know what the demands were from Harbaugh's side, but it was pretty clear when Harbaugh started making the rounds that when he didn't come to the Raiders for an interview, that he was probably out. And then that basically narrowed it down to Antonio Pierce. And I had tweeted out that they could hire him prior to January 22nd. Had a lot of people on the X or Twitter tell me I was wrong. I'm looking at my watch today. It's not the 22nd. And
it is not.
The coach yesterday, so
it is not.
I guess I was right. But no, he deserved it. He earned it down the stretch with the way this team played, especially on defense. Bringing back that Raiders mentality, the Raiders way, guys having fun in the locker room. The question is, can he do that over a full 17-game season? Can he keep that energy? Can he keep it for 3 or 4 years and just see where this team's going to go? We don't know the answer to that, but we're about to find out. And for a lot of people, they're like, let AP run it back for a year. Now that he's the head coach, he needs to be in place for 3 or 4 years. They need stability. They need him in the building. They're going to have a rookie quarterback they need to develop. They can't blow this thing up in a year or two. It's Antonio Pierce's job to continue where he left off after they beat the Broncos and carry this over into 2024 and then 2025. And it's going to come down to he's going to have to improve with his game management skills and what he does on the offensive side of the ball. Who is he bringing in to be his coordinator? Who is he bringing in to be his quarterback? But I think the Raiders have a real leader of men here, a guy who embraces the Raider way. And we'll see how the locker room responds over a full season.
Yeah. Once he, left the game as a player and he did a little stuff at ESPN. He decided in his head that he wanted to be a head coach. So I like the fact that he didn't finagle his way into the NFL. He went to high school. Then they went to the college ranks, and then after they went to college ranks, he came into the NFL. So he kind of worked through that process. He has been in contact with a lot of guys who he likes and who he has respect for, like a Marvin Lewis, who might be on the staff, and then Tom Coughlin. So like he's not just saying, my way or the highway. He's just saying, okay, I'm the head coach now, but like I'm gonna kind of get information and get rub some ideas off of some guys who had more experience than me. And say what you want about Marvin Lewis, but his team went in the playoffs several times, and also Tom Coughlin. We know about Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin has been a 2-time Super Bowl winner, beating the Patriots twice. So those things are good signs for me with him. I think I'll say the positive side for a little bit before we go to the other side of it. But but those are the good things of it. Good things I like about it, and then also the leadership quality. I think I mean Mike Tomlin is a CEO head coach. Like kind of cut his teeth on the defensive side. Harbaugh and with the Ravens, CEO head coach was a special teams coach before he was a head coach. Dan Campbell is doing things with the Lions. That patience kind of went through this process, and now you're seeing the fruits of the labor there. So you don't have to be a play caller to be on the defensive or offensive side to be a head coach, but this sport is about scoring points. We can't deny that part. And his biggest decisions coming up, Ryan, is going to be who's going to be the next OC of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, we don't know who it's going to be. We've heard Cliff Kingsbury's name thrown out there. There is a Rooney Rule process involved with an offensive coordinator. They have to interview 2 external candidates. This isn't going to be where you're going to wake up today or tomorrow and they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. The same goes for the quarterback coach. I tweeted that out yesterday. There is a Rooney Rule process for that as well, because it steps into most offensive coordinator jobs. So in that, they have to interview 1 external minority candidate. Virtual interviews do count towards that, so they could just do a couple of quick Zoom calls if they wanted to. I would hope that they would bring people into the building and spend time with them and talk about offensive philosophy, and not just do a quick hour Zoom and say, "Yep, we did it." Kind of like they did with the head coaching interviews and bringing in Chris Richard and Leslie Frazier. But I'm happy for AP. I'm excited to wear this.
Are you saying that? Are you saying that those 2 guys aren't on anybody's radar to be a head coach?
I'm going to plead the 5th. I don't want to get in trouble, but those guys are not going to be head coaches for other organizations in the coming future. So we'll leave it at that. Now, they could end up on Antonio Pierce's staff as assistants. If something happens with Patrick Graham, Leslie Frazier could be the defensive coordinator. If they lose, a DB or secondary coach, I could see Chris Richard going into that. Maybe Marvin Lewis comes in as the linebackers coach / assistant head coach, because that was Antonio Pierce's position. Mm-hmm. So I could see them doing that. For me, it's one thing to fight down the stretch because you want this guy to get the job, because Josh McDaniels was just so miserable at his job that those players just played really hard for 8 or 9 weeks. Yep. Will they give us that same effort next year? If this thing doesn't go well next year and they're 4-8 going into December, are they going to be planning their trips to Hawaii and Cancun, or are they going to be fighting and showing the same effort they did this year because Antonio Pierce is already in place? That's the one question I have looking at the other side of it. But I do think they made the right hire here. If Jim Harbaugh didn't come, they didn't interview him, if they did reach out and he had no interest, this was the route they had to go to keep that energy in the building. I don't know. I'm a Mike Vrabel fan. I don't know if bringing in Mike Vrabel, who's a defensive coach, who's a leader of men, he would have to get buy-in from the locker room, where Antonio Pierce already had that. He does have experience. I don't know if that really moved the needle enough to disrupt the locker room to make that decision. So they had to go here, but now Raider fans need to buckle up, and we need to root for AP to stay in this position for as long as possible, because they can't be in this situation again 2 years from now.
No, I mean, and that's what everybody's biggest worry is too. Is that could be a possibility. I think also too is defensive guy. Also, what is his plan for a quarterback? Are the Raiders have notoriously not. They've avoided drafting quarterbacks in the first round. Even when they've had like a little glimmer of opportunity here and there, they just haven't done it. And that's a problem. I mean, that's a problem because everybody else is building their teams around quarterbacks on rookie deals. And then that's just kind of the way to do it. And getting them that experience is vital. Getting a retread quarterback, maybe to be like in the quarterback room is fine, but they kind of need to get a guy who's a rookie quarterback who can make plays. But then when you hear Devontae Adams' interview with James Jones, it's almost like he wants a veteran guy. But he did like CJ Stroud last year. I guess they had that all white party we went to, and he liked him a lot. I thought he was very mature for his age. But what are your thoughts about that as far as the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I've been on the train forever. They need to go out and make a splash and get their quarterback. That's what they need to do. Um, okay. Yeah, I've been on the train. They need to go out. They need to get that rookie quarterback. They haven't done it. They've avoided it. Other teams in the league have done it. It's going to be costly. This is where the fan that during the season says, I don't care. I just want to win. I don't care about draft position. Then you end up in this spot where you're picking 13th. And then they don't want to give up the draft capital to move up. The Raiders are in a prime spot now. You have Devontae Adams, who's 31. You have Max Crosby entering his prime. You have some pieces on this offense. You can risk some draft picks and go get your guy. It may fail, but you have to take the risk at some point. You can't wait for someone to fall in your lap. Devontae Adams talked about Jaden Daniels a little bit on his podcast as well. So I do think the Raiders need to be really aggressive and try to get into the top three. Now, obviously, if those teams aren't willing to trade, then you're kind of behind the eight ball. But everyone has an asking price, and this is going to be costly. The Raiders are going to have to give up at least two, if not three, number ones to get in the top three with some additional picks. And they're just going to have to bite the bullet and do it. They can't go into next season with Aiden O'Connell, a 35-year-old Russell Wilson or something like that, because you're going to be back in the same boat again. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. It's time to go get your quarterback and build around him. And it's the perfect opportunity with a new head coach and a new general manager, whoever that's going to be, to do it now, to get them all on the same page.
Yeah, for sure. Can I pause for 1 second? I'll bring my son upstairs. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Talking about getting a quarterback.
Any quarterback. Okay, good. All right. Sorry. All right. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the most it'd be interesting. I think a lot of people I'm watching a couple other shows and just kind of looking around. People kind of give it maybe like a 30% chance that Aiden O'Connell's the quarterback, starting quarterback for this upcoming season. Like I
hope
don't.
not.
I hope not too. And especially if Champ Kelly is the general manager, I would think that, I mean, all his rhetoric has been around getting a new quarterback. So you can't spend the whole time talking about getting a new quarterback and then come back with Aiden O'Connell. And I'm not trying to hate on I'm trying to hate on the guy like he's whatever. I know some folks are using the stat. I call them the stat chasers. They say, "Oh, he had better stats than Bryce Young in less games," stuff like that. So like people are just saying stuff like that, but he's not built for today's NFL as far as that goes. I mean, he's a guy who would, if you had to have him for if you had to have him for 2 or 3 weeks, I could deal with it, but not for an entire season. I think even Devontae Adams talked about having a guy who can move and be mobile as well. And he also talked about how much he hated playing in that dink and dunk offense. I'm sorry, yeah. And he also talking about it's about getting big plays, and that's something that the Raiders need to be able to do, to be able to get chunk plays consistently. So I know it may not, even if you can't trade up and it ends up doing that. I don't mind going. We have plenty of time to talk about the draft and who's available. Maybe at 13 if they don't, or maybe if they have to go up a little bit higher. But I know right tackle's in need. They can't draft the tackle out of Penn State. They can't draft. They got to go quarterback, first round quarterback in this draft to really kind of solidify what this team needs to do going forward, because like you mentioned, kicking the can down the road is not good for business. It's not good football.
I would go as far to say, and we can record this and put it on record, if Aiden O'Connell starts this year as the Raiders quarterback, Antonio Pierce won't make it past year 2. They need to go out and make a splash. And and this was my fear if Champ Kelly gets the job. I've talked to you several times about this, that he talked the big game that the fans wanted to hear. I'm going to get a quarterback. I need to build around the quarterback. He put that into the universe. Well, that's the standard I'm holding Champ Kelly to as a general manager.
Yep.
If Champ Kelly does not go out and go get a quarterback, then in my eyes, he's failed as a general manager. They can't run this back with Aiden O'Connell, Jacoby Brissett, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, name whoever. Those guys are expensive. I mean, last time I checked, Jimmy G got paid $25-30 million to play like 6 games. Going and get the veteran quarterback one, it's going to put you behind roster building because you're taking several resources away from other positions that you just
Yep.
can't address because you're paying the quarterback to be a mediocre quarterback at best. So they're just going to have to bite the bullet. Now, if those teams won't trade out, then obviously they're going to have to take a chance and figure out, do they like Bo Nix? Do they like Michael Penix? Do they like JJ McCarthy enough? Maybe they trade down and grab him later, but you need that 5th-year option. I do believe they should go quarterback here. If one of those top 3 teams falls in love with Marvin Harrison Jr., let's say the Patriots say, you know what, we're so far away from contending, our roster is terrible. We're just going to take the wide receiver because he's the best player, or we're going to trade down. Then the Raiders would have an opportunity to get to 3. And if they take Marvin Harrison, they would have an opportunity to get to 4 because the Cardinals would be sitting there at 4 with Kyler Murray. I've seen people throw out the Raiders need to go get Kyler Murray. I looked at that contract yesterday. There's no way in hell I'm trading for Kyler Murray's contract. Again, you're just basically blowing up your salary cap for a guy that you don't know if he can go out and do it. Can he stay healthy for the long term? Can he stay healthy for 17 games? Can he run the system the Raiders are going to bring in? So I think once they get an offensive coordinator in place and we know kind of what the system's going to be, we can kind of start looking at quarterbacks that might be fits. But at the end of the day, Champ Kelly and Antonio Pierce, if it is Champ Kelly, we don't know if it is or not. If it's Ed Dowd, they have to go get the quarterback.
Is there a balance between, because I mean, like in all of in everything everything, whether it's this show or whether it's your professional life, whatever, you have to make those decisions yourself. Like you can lean on people who have more experience for you. Is there like that? Is there that balance of the decision making that Antonio has to go through? Because Tom Coughlin is, is a Hall of Fame head coach. Marvin Lewis is a guy who's coached a lot of games, and as a defensive coordinator, defensive staffer, and then also as a head coach. Is there a balance for him? He has to balance. He has to, because he has to make the final decision is going to be his to make. To quote, remember the Titans? I never seen the assistant coach going to go on the newspaper for a loss. Go a loss has always been the head coach, right? Denzel Washington said that. So, what are your thoughts about like that balancing act he has to make here between his decisions and what is being suggested by some of the guys he's leaning on?
Well, first of all, I think the quarterback decision, the roster decisions aren't Antonio Pierce's. They belong to the general manager. Antonio Pierce's job is to coach the players the general manager gives him. Now, obviously, he's going to have some input on what type of player he wants. But whether or not they go and get a quarterback completely comes down to the general manager and the people around them. Ultimately, it is the general manager's decision. He's going to take advice from if he has an assistant general manager, his player personnel, his director of pro personnel, his director of college scouting. Like, he's going to get input from several different people. And I'm sure Mark Davis is going to have a say in what they want to do here as well. But ultimately, the roster decisions fall among the lap of the general manager. As far as hiring the coaching staff, that's going to come down to Antonio Pierce. It's his call of who he wants to run his offense, to be his quarterback coach, to be his O-line coach, to establish an offensive scheme that's going to complement the style of defense he wants. I think a lot of fans forget that. We want to go see the Miami Dolphins, the San Francisco 49ers. We want to see this high-flying, move the ball, run the ball offense. We don't know if Antonio Pierce wants to do that. We know that he wants to punt and play field position and try to hold teams under 20 and just play a ton of defense. He might go get an offensive coordinator that's kind of old school, that wants to run the ball, that's not going to take chances down the field, that's going to try to protect the ball and not turn it over. And you're going to see a very conservative offense with a guy that's going to try to lean on his defense to win. And we know Antonio Pierce preaches aggressiveness, but he was the least aggressive head coach in the entire National Football League last year when it came to going for it on fourth down situations where they were expected to go for it. So as much as we want, and I specifically want, someone from the 49ers or, McVay, Shanahan trees, guys that can run some offenses that are having a lot of success around the league. We don't know if that's what Antonio Pierce wants to do. At the end of the day, like I said, he may go the conservative route and just get someone to try to make the offense not lose the game for him, because he's a defensive guy by heart. And we saw with some of the coaching in-game decisions that he wants to win with defense, that he does not want to put the game in his offense's hands.
Okay, that's not what I wanted. That's not. I mean, you're right. But it's possible. But you gotta have the ability to score, man. I mean, like, you want to end the game. I would much rather have my offense on the field late in the game than have my defense, because every single rule is against that defense to try to get a stop. And so that's gonna be interesting to see how he is. There are some defensive coaches who are, or some CEO coaches who are really aggressive. He's not one of them so far. So we'll see if that is a thing that goes through for the Raiders. Are you concerned about the fact that maybe the Raiders have hired another coach, like back-to-back cycles, where they're kind of bidding against themselves and not and not in that?
I don't, not here.
No, not
I
here.
think Antonio Pierce, with what he did in his 9-week trial, and the 5-4 record speaks for itself. He was over 500, but 5-4 doesn't move the needle for me. I think it was more, you saw a guy who came in and took a defense that wasn't playing well and has never played well historically for the last 15 or 20 years, and they were the number one defense in the league. You saw a guy who came in and changed the culture, and the players immediately bought in. You saw the running game finally come to life under Antonio Pierce. So this isn't the Rich Bisaccia where Rich Bisaccia went 7-5. He lost 5 of 6 games at one point. They won 4 games down the stretch. They squeaked in by a combined 12 points. That's not what you saw with Antonio Pierce. Like, he changed the locker room. He changed the culture. He got buy-in from everyone. He got the defense to play at an elite level for 9 weeks. So you're hoping that continues over into next year. And then if they make enough changes on the offensive side, whether or not another team would have hired Antonio Pierce as a head coach, I don't think should sway whether Mark Davis and the Raiders think he's the right guy for their job right now. And typically in sports, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, if you have the tyrant coach that's demanding that no one likes, you almost always go the opposite way with the next hire. And you see that from teams all across major sports. Not saying that Antonio Pierce is that true players coach. He gets buy-in, but he does lead, and there is some demanding aspects of what he asks them to do, but he also lets them be themselves. So that's where the players coach comes into it. That's great when you're playing well. We'll see what happens if we get into next year and adversity hits and we don't see that. But until we get to that point, we don't know.
Yep.
And like I said, outside of Jim Harbaugh in this stretch, I don't think there was another coach that I would have put above him. I would have had Vrabel right next to him, but I don't think I would have put another one above him, because you saw him get stuff out of guys on this roster that haven't performed prior to Antonio Pierce being the head coach. Malcolm Kuntz showed up. You saw Malcolm X, Trayvon Morig take another step. You saw Devon Diablo take a step. You saw Tyree Wilson show flashes. You saw Jack Jones. So you saw Trey Tucker show a little bit there. You saw Zamir White. Like, none of these guys performed under Josh McDaniels. So the fact that he was able to elevate the players on the roster to a new level in 9 weeks speaks to what he might be able to do over a full year. And also, you have to understand that Antonio Pierce probably is going to be able to bring in and recruit some free agents based on the locker room atmosphere and guys talking around the league. Guys want to have fun. Guys don't want to play in New England. It's fun. It's only fun because they're winning. But as soon as you start losing, you see what happens there.
Yeah, they fell apart.
I'm sure Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, those guys are out recruiting. I would fully expect Josh Jacobs to come back now as well. And then if you would have gone another route, if you would have got a different GM, if you would have got a different coach, maybe they don't want any of these players. Maybe they're like, you know what, Devontae's nice and all, but we're going to go rookie quarterback. We want the draft picks, move Devontae. Max, if he's a locker room problem when he comes in, maybe the new coach decides, you know what, I can get 2 or 3 number ones for this guy. He's being a problem right now because he didn't want us. Let's move him. Let's do it our way. You avoid that whole mess. Yeah. And I think the pressure's not on AP. The pressure moves to the locker room. They wanted this guy. They went to bat for him. Now they have to show up and prove it. If these players go out and win 6, 7, 8 games next year, I think the blame starts to go to them more than it does the coaching staff, because they're the ones that are on the field playing. They have to execute the plays. They did everything they could to get Antonio Pierce this position. Now they have to back it up.
As far as I do think a couple of things too is with Antonio, like, when was the last time the Raiders even lose a home game when he was when they lost the Viking game? That was it, right? But as far as him. So the Raiders have they can become a home team, win some home games because they have not been they haven't been good in that stretch. And I know some people are saying, hey, they beat a bunch of backup quarterbacks. You know what? I have been Raider fan long enough to see when the Raiders have played some of these backup quarterbacks, we've gotten lit up by a lot of backup quarterbacks too. So you play who's on the schedule. He took advantage of the opportunity and they won those games. And a lot of times they won those games going away. Like, I mean, it wasn't like we're sitting there sweating in the fourth quarter. As far as that goes. So the Minnesota game is kind of the one game where they didn't do anything, but after that they started playing really good football as far as that goes. And I would say one thing about you mentioned time management and those kind of things. Like, there's coaches who have been in the league for 25 years who still make those same.
There's plenty of them.
There's plenty of them. Andy Reid is notoriously bad with time management and things like that. So so like I'm not excusing Antonio Pierce in that sense, but let's be real about that part of it. Like, I'm not going to overreact to that part of it as well. So the players do get the guy that they want. I do think there's also a value there where Antonio Pierce might be more valuable to the Raiders than he would be to, say, the Titans or the Falcons as far as that goes. You had a tweet about Tom Coughlin and his connection to Mark Brunell. And in my Michael Penix research for another show, I was looking at a lot of Mark Brunell films. So it's kind of funny that you end up talking about Mark Brunell. He's the quarterback's coach for the Lions. He might be a guy who could be in line or just maybe get an interview with the Raiders. What are your thoughts about that? And then also, are you worried about him in the aspect of being? I mean, will he be a first time play caller? Because I think for me, I think a lot of Raider fans, they kind of want a guy who's called plays before.
Yeah, I'm on record fully saying I want an experienced offensive coordinator who's gone out and called plays and done it. You don't want to have to go through the growing pains of a first-time play caller with a first-time head coach. So I wouldn't say, and I even put this in the tweet, it's just a name, not hire him. And people immediately, bogus hire, I wouldn't hire him. Like, I literally wrote it in there because I knew those were the responses I was going to get.
People, can I say something to you? Can I say something to you? So Ryan, could we just do this, Raider Nation? When Ryan and I tweet, can y'all read the entire tweet and instead of just seeing the name and just reacting? Because that's, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my criteria would be, one, experience. I want an experienced play caller. Two, I want someone from the Shanahan McVay tree. Three, I want a guy who's developed quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah, 100%.
Those are three things that are hard to find in one candidate. I don't think you're going to find a candidate who can check all three of those boxes. So where are you going to give your give and take? Like, if they're under the Shanahan McVay tree, but they haven't called plays, maybe that's somewhere you go, because obviously the head coach has called their plays there, but now you're stuck with a first-time play caller, so there is risk. Mark Brunell's name I threw out there because he played with AP. They were teammates. He was the quarterback for Tom Coughlin when they were making playoff runs in Jacksonville when they were an expansion team. He coached him forever. So if Tom Coughlin does have stay and he is in Antonio Pierce's ear to identify offensive staff. Now, that's not saying maybe he doesn't want to come over and be the quarterback coach, but let's live in a world where Ben Johnson gets a head coaching job and the Lions do not promote Mark Brunell, the offensive coordinator, and a new offensive coordinator comes in above him. Does he want to go back and be the quarterback coach under a coordinator that he's never worked under? Or does he say, you know what, I want to go be the quarterback coach? Can you imagine him come over as a quarterback coach position? Like, I would love that, to have a former guy who's been a teammate. He's learning in Detroit under Ben Johnson, who's the hottest offensive coordinator candidate in the country right now. And people act like it would be a terrible hire if he was added to the offensive staff in any capacity. He did go to UW. He was a Washington Husky left-handed quarterback, which just happens to be what Michael Penix is. Yeah. If the Raiders decide, this is kind of where Penix for me can throw the deep ball. He's got some touch issues when he's on the move, like underneath, trying to hit guys on the run. But if you're going to play a smash mouth style offense where you're going to rely on the running game and you're going to build up that offensive line to move bodies, and you want a quarterback who you can, be Daryl and Monica and be a mad bummer and take shots when you want to, Penix might be your guy if he can pass the medical. He's not going to be the guy that's going to get around and run around and evade pressure and be Michael Vick or be Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields or even prime Russell Wilson. That's not Michael Penix. But you need a pocket passer with arm strength that can just heave the ball down the field off of play action and can get the ball vertically to Trey Tucker or Devontae Adams, who by the way, Devontae Adams didn't run vertical routes in this offense this year, which is probably one of the reasons why he was kind of upset about the offense that Josh McDaniels runs. But I could see Mark Brunell fit. Now, is he going to get an interview? I don't know. Are they going to hire him? Probably not. It's just a name that once we saw Coughlin's name reported, I would probably go ask Shane Waldron what he's up to. He was the offensive coordinator
100%
for the Seahawks. The thing is, if you go get one of these young guys, which is great, that's what the Raiders want. If they have success for a year or two, they're gone. You're going to have to do it again and again. So at some point, you want to internally build from within. Get a quarterback coach to develop under that offense coordinator so you have someone in-house to elevate and just keep that line running, which is exactly what McVay and Shanahan do. They usually stay within house for those internal promotions. So there's a number of candidates out there. I see the Robinson guy with the Rams, the quarterback coach, is getting a lot of love right now. But do understand that if you go that route, you may be getting some very frustrating games early in the year. Like, why are they calling this? If guys that haven't done it, don't expect them to hit the ground running and have a top 5, top 10 offense the first half of the season coming out of the gates, especially if you have a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it might click later on, no question about it. But just some Mike Brunell, Providence as a coach. Right after he left the Jets in 2011, went to Providence School to be an assistant coach. And Episcopal School of Jacksonville. He was the head coach from there from 2013 to 2020. Then he has been the quarterbacks coach for the Lions since 2021. So that's just something, just a little background on him as far as that goes. We heard Zach Robinson, Jason Vrabel is another guy who people names throwing out there because he's the passing game coordinator for the Packers. We talked about Brunell. We talked about Darrell Bevel. People talk about Ken Dorsey, who's not in the game, who's not coaching right now. Got replaced by Brady out there in Buffalo. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, there's going to be some big situations coming up. As far as the OC situation, those don't have to be in person, correct? Those can be.
They can be virtual. They can just Zoom them if you want.
Yeah. They can be virtual there, so that's good. And you would be in favor of bringing back Jacobs. So you got Jacobs, and you have
on the right contract.
On the right contract, yeah. So if you have Vrabel,
not giving him $13 million a year, no.
You're not giving him the Christian McCaffrey? No. So you have Vrabel, you have White. That will be a pretty good tandem back there as well. Do you, as far as being a team that just kind of runs the football, is that like the way, like if we were, if you were in that shoes, what kind of you want that? I know you want that Shanahan offense, but that Shanahan offense, they run the ball a lot. So like that should be something that he should hopefully be on his radar. As far as that goes, they run the ball a lot, and they do take shot plays down the field, which is kind of satisfies both needs for the Raiders.
I think it's just the run game, the different schemes, the different types of runs they have. They're very multiple. It's not like they run just zone. They don't run just gap. They're very innovative in the different things they do running the football. And then everything is set up off of that. All the play action is coming off that wide zone. The bootlegs, I'd like to see some bootleg action, get the quarterback, especially if you have a guy that has some mobility, get him outside the pocket. Don't just have a guy standing in the same spot where the defensive line knows I can tee up. I know where this guy's going to be. Like Aiden O'Connell, the defense knows where he's going to be every snap that they're passing.
Yep.
That offense, that Shanahan style offense, pretty much most quarterbacks that have played in it have had success. Like it's hard to find a guy who just was terrible at it. Like Jimmy Garoppolo took him to the Super Bowl in that offense. Brock Purdy. I don't know if you saw Amy Traska's little video the other day that was on Twitter. She's talking about the 8 quarterbacks that were left. She goes, yeah, there's 7 really good quarterbacks and Brock Purdy. Like, so she kind of took a shot at him there.
I love Amy. I love Amy. She's something else.
Yeah, and then you saw what Tua was not good under Brian Flores, and then immediately gets in that style offense. And obviously he has elite weapons outside, but the Raiders do have weapons on offense, so the quarterback can hit the ground running if it's a system that's quarterback friendly. If you're going to get into a system where if it's going to be kind of how AP had so hard to recall games, where it's run on first down, run on second down, get to 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, and expect that quarterback to keep the chains moving 4 to 5 times in a drive to get into field goal range, that's not going to happen with a rookie quarterback. Like, one of those third downs isn't going to convert, and you're punting. That is my one concern with AP, is I think we're not going to see the explosive, put up ton of points, throw the ball down the field type of offense that the Raider fans crave. I think we're in store for a conservative, run the football, occasionally get the ball down the field, don't turn it over, and kind of just be like possession keepers, kind of like. The Raiders have to, if they're going to run the football, the offensive line needs to be blown up. As far as run, they can't run block. That Andre James would have to be replaced. You would need a new right guard. You'd probably want a new right tackle if you could. Now, you could get away with Jermaine Illuminor in the interim if you need a guy for a year to fill in. But if the Raiders really want to run that type of offense where it's smash mouth, they need to get 2 or 3 new offensive linemen.
Yeah, and I just think, I mean, I'm hoping that that we're wrong about that part of it. Because as good as the Raiders defense is, and there'll probably be some additions there, but they're not the 85 Bears. So, like, and then they're not. So, like, playing like that defensive style, that's not going to be conducive to them being a next level team. Because you gotta take a deep breath and, like, look around the league and look who's left, and that's really not the way to do it. You got to be able to make some big plays on the field. I mean, the thing that's literally going to keep Kansas City possibly out of the Super Bowl this year, even though they have Mahomes, is their inability to make big plays down the field. So that is what it is. Antonio Pierce is the new head coach of the Raiders. If anything else you want to add about this? Like, does it bother you that there wasn't? I mean, I understand that it wasn't really a search again. It was kind of like that. Did that part bother you at all as far as that goes? I mean, not to just to get some ideas and get into some conversations with some other coaches to see how they would run like an off-season program or whatever. Then you can just share that information with Antonio Pierce, even though he was your candidate all along.
Yeah, I think it doesn't bother me that Antonio Pierce got the job, because I actually wanted him to get the job. I think my discontent with how the process was run is Mark Davis came out and literally said, "I'm going to have this whole search. Yep. We're going to look. We're going to do everything we can to find the right guy to lead this team."
No stone unturned, and then he only had one stone.
And if it came back to AP, great. I think the pressure from the locker room eventually, once AP got a couple of requests, you saw the locker room turn up the heat, especially Matt Crosby. And then basically the decision was made right then. And I think the fact that he didn't want to take this in, Mark Davis didn't want to take this into next week when Antonio Pierce could physically interview with people and get a job somewhere. I think the problem was that he didn't request virtual interviews with all these hot candidates like every other team did. And I hear people saying, well, they didn't have a GM who would sit in on it. Champ Kelly would. He's the interim GM. There's 3 or 4 other teams that have GM openings. Didn't stop them from doing these virtual interviews. The Raiders were literally the only team that didn't do any. Yep. So if you wanted to have a search, do a Zoom interview or do a virtual interview with some of these other candidates, with Ben Johnson, with Frank Smith, with whoever. I don't care who they are. Just do it. Get some intel. You can go back and still hire AP before other teams could get access to him. So to me, there was no search. If it comes down, the only 3 people they talked to were were Antonio Pierce, Leslie Frazier, and Chris Richard. There was no search. Yeah. So not only is there pressure on the locker room, I think Mark Davis is going to look, he's not looked upon favorably by the fans at this point based on his coaching hire track record. This is not going to look good. Like I said, if 2 years in, they have to make another change, because he had an opportunity. This is the best free agent market of coaches ever that I can remember. I mean, when did you have Harbaugh and Belichick? Not that I wanted Belichick, Vrabel, and you had guys that have won. You have some young guys. You have the ability to talk to anyone before. There's 2 weeks before you can hire anyone for the most part, unless you want to do what the Raiders did and just go interview two minority candidates that aren't in the league. So the fact that they didn't interview anyone else, I think, doesn't speak well for the search. But having said that, I'm really excited that Antonio Pierce got the job.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like I just look, I'm just like a furious note taker, and I just feel like for me, if I can just pick Vrabel's mind, pick pick Harbaugh's mind, pick some of these guys mind on how these veteran quarterbacks, and I can just really kind of give those like a little bit of a blueprint to AP.
Or
Who
ask
could,
them what they would do with the offense. Like, what would
yeah,
you do to fix our offense? Like,
exactly,
give me the
exactly.
ideas of all the other coaches in the league. What would they do?
Yes, and I think the last thing for me about the OC situation, the OC situation is the Shanahan offense. Like it's kind of like a great introductory for a young quarterback. Like it really is. So like that's where you could have if you end up drafting a Bo Nix, you end up drafting a Michael Penix, you end up drafting somebody like that. You'd be able to kind of get him into the league, get him some easy throws, get him acclimated to the National Football League because I think it's no doubt that all these guys all these guys are pretty fluent in that and they are playing good football. Real quick before we go, a friend of mine asked me where the picks go. So where the picks go. So you want to pick these games real quick and then we'll call it a show.
Yeah, I can pick these games.
We got Houston and Baltimore. Baltimore is a 9-point favorite. Well, 9.5-point favorite. What do you think about this one?
This is a tough one because Houston's really good on early downs, first and second down throwing the football, and I think the Ravens are the #1 defense in the league against teams throwing the football in early downs. That's a lot of points. I would probably take the Texans with the points, but I think the Ravens win the game.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm going to Houston to hold to cover. I would say they have a little bit of a dragon they have to get off their back, or monkey they have to get off the back in Baltimore to start winning playoff games with Lamar Jackson. And I think them winning a really close game is a good thing for them. I think blowing somebody out in this spot is not good. They need to get over that close win, and I think they can have a big showing in the AFC Championship game if that's the case. We got Green Bay and the 49ers. What do you think about that one?
What's the point spread?
The point spread. Let me go back to here.
It might not matter.
It might not matter. I think it was 10. That's my thought. It was 10.
It's got to be a big number.
Yeah, big number. NFL.
I'm going to take the 49ers to win the game. I just think offensively they have too many weapons. They're at home. Green Bay's playing well right now, but there are ways to take advantage of that Green Bay defense, especially running the football with the way that the 49ers do it. McCaffrey, Debo can get back there if they need to. How are they going to cover George Kittle? They're not great against tight ends. So I'm not a huge Brock Purdy guy. I do think Jordan Love might be the better quarterback in this matchup, but I think the roster would lead me and the home field. I don't see the 49ers losing this game, but I do think it'll be close. Like if it was 10, I'd probably take the Packers and the points.
I think both of these road dogs cover in this spot, and I think there might be a moment in here in this game. The Niners are the better team, but like I said, they have to make this game really bad for the quarterback. I'm not sure if it's going to be rain this weekend, or rain today in Northern California, but I know those Californians are getting rain this week, so that could also make the game a little bit closer as well. Tampa Bay, 6-point favorites over Tampa Bay, as far as the game on Sunday.
I don't think this is going to be a close game. I'm going to take the Lions to cover. They're at home. The atmosphere. They're playing really good on offense. I just don't trust the Buccaneers offense. I know what they did last week against Philadelphia, but pretty much every team in the league did that to Philadelphia over the last 10 or 12 weeks. I saw Tampa Bay's game against Carolina the last week of the season where they could barely score. I just don't see them going on the road and being able to hang with the atmosphere, the energy, everything that's going on in Detroit right now. I think Detroit goes to the NFC Championship game and they cover.
Yeah. I agree with that one. I think that's the one game I think it's going to be a blowout. I think also on the Saturday games, I think that time off for a long period of time is going to be something to watch for Baltimore and San Francisco, KC, and the Bills. I think the Chiefs find a way to kind of sneak through this one, and break some hearts in Buffalo. I think they lose the AFC Championship game after that, but I think the Bills are favored by 3 points. What are your thoughts about KC and Buffalo?
I'm gonna go full Lee Corso. Not so fast, my friend. No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills, they win this game at home. I just think Josh Allen is just a force right now. Weather's going to be an issue with him running around and running the football. I just don't. This is Buffalo's time. Josh Allen is 3-3 against Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has never played a road playoff. Think about that for a second. He's never played a road playoff game.
That is crazy.
So now he's got to go on the road. Kansas City doesn't have a ton of offensive weapons. Travis Kelce was dropping balls left and right last week, and he just hasn't been the same this year. And I think Buffalo, all the pressure is on Buffalo because they're expected to win this game, but I think they do win this game. And I think you see Baltimore against Buffalo on Sunday in the AFC Championship game. So I'm going to take the Bills to cover 3 points.
All right, we'll see what happens there. So we disagree on the last one, but I think we agree on the other three. Raider Nation got a new coach. Be happy and like I said, he has some work to do. We'll come back with you when who knows when they actually pick a GM. That could be
interesting. They didn't just name champ. That tells me Ed Dodds has a real shot here.
Yes, it does, and I think too. I think is it possible that Mark is trying to keep all three guys in the building? Is that a possibility? I mean, or do you think that there's no way you could do it, right?
I don't see it being feasible because Ed Dodds is in an assistant GM role now. He's not going to leave the Colts to take the same position and not have power with her, unless he just says, you know what, I want to work for the Raiders and I'm willing to take a lesser role. But I also don't see him taking, and I see a lot of people throwing the president of football operations, just so everyone knows that position oversees the GM. That would be the GM's boss. So I would have a hard time thinking that Ed Dodds would come in that position. Champ Kelly stays as the GM, but that would mean Ed Dodds would basically be the decision maker and not Champ Kelly. So would Champ Kelly stay in a situation where he's basically the GM, but he doesn't have any power?
Yeah.
Maybe if the contract has enough zeros on it, he might do
it.
He would leave the minute another team offered him a job. So, even if they found a way to satisfy these guys for a year or two, the first chance one of them would get to leave, they would probably leave, whichever one didn't have the power.
Yeah.
It would be tough for them to coexist and share power because then who's breaking that tie if they disagree on someone. So ultimately someone has to be in charge. And I don't think that Ed Dodds will leave a position now where he's not in charge to be in a position where he's not in charge, unless his heart is just set on working for the Raiders.
And then also, I mean, if Ed Dodds is the GM, are you going to tell the GM he can't pick his assistant GM? He would already be in a situation where he couldn't pick the coach, so he's not going to pick the assistant GM as well, or the front office people around him. So I don't know if you can keep both. But I definitely,
I do like.
Go ahead.
I do like what you mentioned the other day. There needs to be a checks and balances. We wanted to get rid of these combos and these package deals.
100%.
And to me, if you keep Champ and AP, they're a package deal. Now, you're not going to be able to separate from which guy did what. And if this thing goes south in 2 years, what are you going to do? The worst thing you could do is get rid of them both and start over. So I think bringing in the new GM, keeping AP, and having them work together would be the best of both worlds, because now you have a guy who's not connected with them. If there needs to be a change, you can make a change. If the draft picks or the free agent signings go south, whose fault that was. And we'll see. Maybe Champ stays as the assistant GM if Champ can't get another job somewhere else, but I think that would be hard for him to do. But at the end of the day, they still have families and they still have to make mortgage payments and car payments. So those checks have a lot of zeros on them. They'll keep jobs if they need to.
Yeah, they got a couple more shows than we got coming in. So yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, he's still being. I think Dodd's GM him as the assistant GM. I think that would be something that would hopefully be what the Raiders are talking about. If it doesn't work out, then I think if I have to choose between Dodds and him, I do like the checks and balances. I like the separation there between AP and Dodds. All right, Ray Nation, enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
All right, take care.